Sometimes it feels like everyone is rich these days, splurging on hauls, buying the newest Apple releases, going on vacation after vacation, and yet at the exact same time, it feels like everyone is struggling financially, barely making rent, unable to afford a home, drowning in medical or student debt. It's confusing. How can both of these things feel so true, that everyone is rolling in money and at the same time has no money? Well, here's my theory on why that contradiction is the reality these days, and that is that we are drowning in something called luxury poverty. Luxury poverty is this paradox where people can't afford financial basics like savings or a home, but they're still buying little luxuries like a big screen TV or a designer handbag because those feel more attainable. And because of this, an illusion is created where people are seemingly rich and poor at the exact same time. I came across the phrase luxury poverty after seeing several videos pop up on the topic, and as soon as I learned what luxury poverty meant, I was like, oh yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. This is something that ties so perfectly into the money, media, and culture conversations that I have on this channel. So today we are going to dive into luxury poverty. More specifically, I want to talk about how luxury poverty is a trap that is destroying us, how this whole thing came to be, and how luxury poverty is perpetuated both by bad money habits as well as structural problems like rising costs. If you like these kinds of conversations, be sure to subscribe and check out my video about why we can't afford fun anymore, which I think you'll really enjoy if you like this video. And while we're talking about luxuries, something that people often think of as a luxury is therapy and self-growth, because things like that feel more abstract and often they can come with a high price tag. But luckily, that is not always the case, and that is why I was so excited to partner with today's sponsor, Grow Therapy. Grow Therapy is an incredible platform if you have ever considered trying therapy, because they help you find licensed therapists in your area that take your insurance. That way, you are not stuck paying hundreds of dollars out of pocket. In fact, most Grow Therapy sessions average around $21 with insurance. And some people pay as little as $0. If you've ever tried to find a therapist before, you know how complicated and draining it can usually be, but Grow Therapy makes the process so simple. They have over 19,000 vetted providers with detailed bios and specialties up front, so you're not stuck with some random blind match. You can filter by things like identity, gender, and faith, and easily switch providers if your first fit isn't the right one. Plus, you can book appointments in as little as 2 days with nights and weekends available, so you don't have to deal with endless wait lists. So if you've been putting off therapy because it felt like some out-of-reach luxury, think again, because Grow Therapy makes therapy accessible, flexible, and built around you. Go to growtherapy.co/Cara Nicole or scan the QR code on screen to get started with therapy that fits you. And thank you so much to Grow Therapy for sponsoring today's video. All right, so back to the world of luxury poverty. I think to fully understand this phenomenon, we have to look back in time a bit, because luxury poverty was not always the norm. If you went back 100 years ago, you would see a world where families could more easily afford things like rent and healthcare, but they were spending way more on things like clothes. I actually found a really fascinating breakdown of family budgets from 1903 to 1956, and it is wild to see what their money was going to. Like, look at this row of Philadelphia working men in the year 1923, so almost a century ago. Looking at the chart, you can see that they were spending on average 30% of their budget on food, 25% of their budget on rent, almost 20% of their budget on clothing, and less than 3% of their budget on healthcare. Now, if you're really good about keeping track of your budget, you might see those numbers and be dropping your jaw in disbelief right now. And if you are, it's probably because you realize what I'm getting at, which is basically that those numbers look so different than how we spend money today. Let's compare by looking at food first. As a reminder, a century ago, we saw about 30% of the average worker budget going to food. And nowadays, the lowest income households spend about 33% of their income on food. Pretty similar. That being said, the middle income folks nowadays only spend about 14% of their income on food, and the highest earners these days spend less than 10% of their budget on food. But how do the other categories look here? So let's look at rent next. Back in the day, we saw 25% of a worker's budget going to rent, but nowadays that number is higher. Different studies and surveys show different numbers, but even with all that variety, the stats show the rent to income ratio nowadays being higher than 25%. According to a study by badcredit.org, in 2022, about 30% of people's income went to rent. And cities all over the US are seeing the amount spent on rent increasing. According to Moody's, a place like New York City has a 68.5% rent to income ratio, which is insanely high. That means that you would be spending over half of your income just to have a roof over your head. And according to an article by Forbes last year, people are now spending 42% of their income on rent. Whatever source you use, the numbers are really high, certainly higher than the 25% of budget that we saw in our old budgeting records from last century. But that is not even the craziest piece. My friends, clothing and healthcare, the next two categories we're about to talk about, those are the categories that blew my mind. In our budget from 100 years ago, the average worker was spending almost 20% of their income on clothing. Now, I do feel like folks dressed pretty snazzy back then, no doubt, but 20% of your budget, that is crazy. If you make $50,000 a year and spent that much on clothing, you would be spending $10,000 a year on shopping, or $833 a month. That's a lot of shopping. But here's where luxury poverty comes in. The price of clothing, just like the price of many consumer goods in the last century, have gone way down. You can now buy some clothes for less than a fast food meal cost. You can get a whole new wardrobe with one paycheck. It's the same as how nowadays you can buy a screen TV for less than $100, whereas in the past it might cost you weeks of pay to buy a TV or radio. Or how in the past a plane ticket was only affordable to the very wealthy and could cost half of what it costs to buy a new car. In today's dollars, that would be like buying a round-trip flight from New York to LA for $25,000. Back in the day, a plane ride, a TV, or a new outfit were pure luxury. People dressed up for flights because of this. But now these things are incredibly affordable and thus more accessible. I know personally, the airport is lucky if they even get me in jeans rather than sweatpants. I love me a travel outfit. So on one hand, we see these physical markers of wealth like technology, clothing, and travel, things that you can take a picture of and show off, as getting cheaper for the masses over the last century. We spend less than 3% of our budgets to apparel these days versus the 20% that we saw in the past. But critical costs that aren't so easy to see at quick glance, like owning a home or paying off your hospital bills, those are going up. Remember when I said that these categories blew my mind? Clothing was surprising, but healthcare is the one that I was really shocked by. Back in 1923, our average worker budget had only 2.7% going to health. 2.7%. If we had that nowadays, that would be like a person making $50,000 a year, only having to spend $1,350 for the whole year on healthcare, their insurance, their doctor appointments, their medication. For reference, I once had an ambulance ride because of an allergy attack, and my 15-minute ambulance ride alone cost about that much, and that was after insurance. Nowadays, unsurprisingly, we are allocating way more of our budgets to healthcare costs. Want to guess how much? Put your guesses in the comments below. Let's see how you do. According to a RAND study from the start of 2020, the average household is spending 18.7% of average household income on healthcare costs. And unfortunately, the burden hits way harder the lower your income. Quote, households in the bottom fifth of income groups pay an average of 33.9% of their income toward healthcare. That is over a third of some people's budgets going just to healthcare, compared to the less than 3% that we saw a century ago. Again, this right here is luxury poverty. It's our needs getting more and more expensive while we get tempted with cheaper and cheaper wants. And we are getting very, very good at getting tempted these days. Billions, if not trillions of dollars have been poured into figuring out how to hijack our attention, compare ourselves to others, and impulse purchase things beyond our means. We overspend on things that we don't need all of the time. According to a LendingTree survey, quote, some 21% of people who are in the paycheck to paycheck situation say non-essential spending is to blame. And to make things worse, the items that we want and we get these days, from new kitchen appliances to TVs to t-shirts, are often lower in quality. I made a whole video earlier this year about planned obsolescence and the way that many products fall apart so that you have to buy more. If you want to go watch that one, go check it out after you watch this video. But planned obsolescence adds a whole new level to this luxury poverty situation, because more and more we are just building up the appearance of wealth. Like little accessories we get to tout to look like we have money, but when those accessories aren't even working, well, now we just have props. We're like actors in a play at that point. I was trying to think of an analogy for luxury poverty, and here's what I came up with. Luxury poverty is like having a gorgeous house whose foundation is absolutely rotting from the inside. The walls look polished, the exterior is picture perfect, and so from the outside, you would think it's your dream home, but behind the surface, everything is unstable. It looks good, but it can't hold up. Similarly, a lot of people's financial situations are that right now. We might see shopping hauls and vacations, new iPhones, and in some cases, you might even see a McMansion thrown in there. But behind those material markers of luxury is a whole lot of financial struggle. Because here is the reality. Nearly 2/3 of Americans reportedly live paycheck to paycheck. Credit card debt has hit record highs with delinquency rates soaring. In many US cities, home prices have risen faster than paychecks, making it incredibly hard for anyone who isn't a high earner to buy a house. And healthcare is projected to eat up 1/5 of the entire US economy. In one sense, people are surrounded by abundance. We have so much stuff. We have so much luxury. But in another sense, we are struggling with growing scarcity. Luxury poverty reminds me a lot of the cyberpunk genre, aka high tech, low life. We have dazzling consumer technology at relatively affordable price points. Smartphones, VR headsets, AI tools, streaming services, things that past generations couldn't even imagine. It's honestly like magic, but at the same time, the core necessities of life, stable housing, affordable healthcare, childcare, a secure future, feel like they are slipping further and further out of reach for so many people. And you know what? Some of that is due to individuals overspending on flashy products all the time. I talk about overconsumption a lot on this channel, and it is a huge problem of our generation. We buy way too much stuff, and that in turn puts us into awful financial situations. At the same time, we also have problems with rising healthcare and housing costs that eat up so much of people's budgets. It is ridiculous, and I worry that if we don't make major changes to these areas of our economy, we are screwing ourselves over for the future. Because luxury poverty is destructive. It tricks us into thinking things are fine because the surface looks shiny, when underneath the foundation is cracking. And for real people, that translates to unhealthy stress, growing debt, and social unrest that can create a whole lot of anger and hostility. If we allow luxury poverty to keep growing, it's like trying to live on a diet of cotton candy. It feels really sweet in the moment, it's gonna give you a little sugar high, but long term, it's gonna destroy our health. So if we wanna put an end to luxury poverty, we need to rethink wealth and rethink how we take care of others. We cannot keep measuring ourselves by what we can show off, because real wealth, it's about financial security and peace of mind, and ensuring that that type of wealth is accessible to more people is foundational to a functioning society. But what do you guys think? Have you seen examples of luxury poverty in your life, and what do you think it's gonna take to fix this problem? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below and what topics you want to see me cover next. If you like this video, go watch my video on how we are way too obsessed with rich people. I think you're really gonna like that one. Thank you to my patrons on Patreon and those on Buy Me a Coffee for supporting this channel, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye.